Hi,
Okay, good afternoon and welcome back to the afternoon session. We have two talks in this session. The first talk is by Professor Anissa from IISER Pune. I don't think to this present audience any special introduction is needed because she is known to both the faculty and students from Department of I am Mathematics IISc and also IISER Pune. So today she is going to talk on an application of SCP for the P Laplacian. Anissa.
yeah, thanks, Professor Nandakumaran, and thank you to the organizers Apurva, Chandrashil, Tejas, and Vamsi Pingle for giving me this opportunity to give a talk. The title of the talk, as Professor Nandakumaran mentioned, is an application of SCP. So by SCP, I mean the strong comparison principle for the P Laplacian. This is a joint work with the PhD student Mrityunjay Ghosh. So he's a PhD student at IIT Madras working with Anup TV, but he is a joint PhD student between me and Anup. So this is a work with him. Okay, so let me begin with the plan of the talk. I will start with the motivation for the kind of problems that we work on. And these problems are called as shape optimization problems. And an example of such a problem is an isoperimetric problem. I will not spend too much time on this part. But there are these isoperimetric inequalities in mathematical physics, which is where the problems that we consider fall into. So I will briefly mention this so that we organically get into the setup. Okay, and then I will talk about a few eigenvalue optimization problems over a given family of domains. Then I will list some main results and give the key steps in the proof. And the key steps are going to be shape differentiation or the shape calculus, which will talk about the differentiability of the functions in question, and what is the expression of the derivative, how does that look like. And then we analyze this expression of the derivative of the quantity of interest by some reflection technique, and that reflection technique we apply by some using reflection about some planes which are either translating, or in other words which are moving or which are rotating, so depending upon the geometry of the domain. And then we will apply, if we are in the linear PDE, then we apply the maximum principles which are available in the literature. But if the PDE is non-linear, then the maximum principle, they are not useful anymore. I mean, they are useful at a much later stage, but before applying the maximum principle, we need to apply the comparison principles. And there are two types of comparison principles. One is weak comparison principle and one is strong comparison principle. I will talk about, I will discuss more about it when we get there. Okay, so I don't think I will have time for the numerical evidence and the list of references. I just included it here just in case anyone has any question. I can just show those slides to them. And even I will not be able to do complete justice to the proof, but I will just sketch the main ideas, just mention the main ideas that are used in the proof. Okay, so the motivation I always start with the same motivation, that questions of the following type, they arise quite naturally. Like, why are small water droplets and bubbles that float in air approximately spherical? Okay, why does a herd of reindeer form a circle if attacked by wolves? Why does a cat fold her body to form almost a round shape on a cold night? Can we hear the shape of a drum? That is, if there is a drum playing in the next room, just if you have the complete information about the sound, in other words, if you have the complete information about the frequency or the wavelength, then can you guess what shape the drum might have? And of all geometric figures having a certain property, which one has the greatest area or volume? Or similar question is, of all figures having a certain property, which one will have least perimeter or surface area? And mathematicians have been trying to answer these questions via what is called as shape optimization problems. So what is shape optimization problem? As the name suggests, it is to find the shape which is optimal, in the sense that it minimizes a certain cost functional while satisfying given constraints. Okay, so mathematically speaking, the problem is to come up with a domain omega that minimizes a functional cost functional under consideration, possibly subject to some constraint of the form g omega equal to 0. So I will write the constraint in a mathematical form. Okay, so in other words, what we try to do is we minimize the functional j omega over a family of admissible domains. Or in other words, I just try to find a star domain inside the same family of domains. This is important. It should belong to the admissible family of domains, and it attains the minimum of all the values that the cost functional might can take. Okay, so in many cases, the functional j omega that we want to minimize, it will depend on the solution of a given PDE, which are defined on variable domains, right? So that is where the PDE aspect comes into picture. So these are called, there is something called isoperimetric problem. Okay, no, this is not isoperimetric problem in the mathematical physics, but this is the classical isoperimetric problem. So I just listed it here just to give an example of the shape optimization problem. So what is an isoperimetric problem? A typical problem is to enclose a given area A with the shortest possible curve. Okay, so why does this fall into the category of shape optimization problem? Because here we are minimizing the perimeter, whatever that means, and the constraint is among all domains enclosing area exactly equal to A. So we know that the classical isoperimetric theorem, it asserts that in the Euclidean plane, the unique solution is a circle. This property of the circle can also be described with the help of an inequality, which is called as isoperimetric inequality. So which says that for any piecewise smooth simple closed curve C in a plane with arc length L, and suppose it encloses area A strictly greater than 0, then L square is always greater than or equal to 4 pi times A. And the inequality will become equality only if and only if this C is a circle of radius root A by pi. So this talks about not just existence of a minimizer, but also the uniqueness of the perimeter minimizer among all the domains enclosing a given area A. Okay, and there are many other results of a similar nature, which are referred to as isoperimetric inequalities of mathematical physics. And they are useful in many contexts, which are useful in physics, or in they have physical significance. And extrema, we try to seek extremum of those quantities which are of physical significance. The example could be the energy functional, or the eigenvalue of a differential equation, or the fundamental gap, the difference between the second eigenvalue and the first eigenvalue, or the ratio of the first two eigenvalues, or the convex combination of first k eigenvalues. Depending upon the situation, whichever is of interest of study, we try to seek extremum of those quantities of physical significance. And they are generally shown to be extremal for circular or spherical domain. But it also depends on the family of admissible domains. Maybe the circle or the sphere may not even belong to the family of domains. So what generally is observed is the most symmetric domain that is available in your admissible family of domains is generally observed to be enjoying the extremum value for the cost functional. Okay, for example, there is the celebrated Faber-Cran theorem, which says that among all domains with fixed volume, the ball minimizes the first Dirichlet eigenvalue of the Laplacian. And suppose lambda 1 omega denote the first Dirichlet eigenvalue of the Laplacian on a bounded domain omega, then this Faber-Cran theorem says that lambda 1 of omega is always greater than or equal to lambda 1 of B, where B is a ball in Rn such that the volume of omega is same as the volume of B. So among all the domains enclosing the same volume, the ball with that volume will minimize the first Dirichlet eigenvalue. So this is something similar to the isoperimetric inequality. And it further says that this inequality will become equality if and only if your omega is equal to ball. So it also tells you the existence and uniqueness of the minimizer in this case. Okay, so now next is we will consider eigenvalue problems of the following type. So our operator, the differential operator, will be a P Laplacian, and this will be our eigenvalue problem. And we will have Dirichlet condition on the boundary of the domain omega. So I will start with this particular family of domains just to and then go to a particular family of domains which we considered in our recent work. So let me start with a family of domains where I have a bigger ball of a fixed radius, and there is a smaller ball again of a fixed radius whose closure is removed from the bigger ball, and they need not be concentric. So the center of B naught is free to move inside the interior of B1. Okay. And this by P Laplacian, I mean this nonlinear differential operator. Okay, where P can take values between 1 and infinity. So please observe that when P is equal to 2, this P Laplacian becomes the Laplacian, and this becomes your usual eigenvalue problem for the Laplacian with Dirichlet boundary condition. Okay, so lambda 1 omega. So let me introduce what I mean by the first eigenvalue, or the smallest Dirichlet eigenvalue for this particular eigenvalue problem. So a real number lambda is called an eigenvalue of the eigenvalue problem if there exists a non-zero u in this particular Sobolev space W0 1p omega, such that the following holds. That is the weak formulation of the differential equation. That is when you take the inner product against all the elements in the Sobolev spaces, in the Sobolev space, you get the equality, like left hand side is equal to right hand side in the weak form. Okay, so now let lambda 1 omega denote the smallest positive eigenvalue of this eigenvalue problem, and it has the following variational characterization, that it is given by the infimum of the Rayleigh quotient. So here the Rayleigh quotient, because I am working with the P Laplacian, instead of the L2 norms, I will be considering the LP norms both in the numerator and in the denominator. Okay, so this is the variational characterization of lambda 1 for the P Laplacian. Okay, now it is a fact that this eigenvalue is simple, and without loss of generality, an eigenfunction which we will denote by y1 omega corresponding to this lambda 1 omega can be chosen to be positive because it doesn't change sign, and we can choose it to be of unit LP norm because the eigenspace is one dimensional. You can just in order to get hold of a unique eigenfunction, we just impose these two conditions on it. Okay, so in the past, we know that for the linear case, that is when P is equal to 2, that is for the Laplacian, and for in the Euclidean space, Keshavan, Ram, Shiv Kumar, and also as a corollary of one of Harsh's proof, and also there was a private communication of Ashbag, which proved exactly the same thing, but maybe some of them proved it only for E2. Some of them just proved the extremum value, but did not prove the monotonicity property. But in some form, some version of this were proved by many different mathematicians independently. So the theorem, the result which Keshavan proved, which I'm referring to right now, is that the first Dirichlet eigenvalue lambda 1 for the Laplacian attains its maximum whenever, so the most concentric configuration in this admissible family of domains is the concentric configuration, right? So it is attained for that particular concentric configuration is what this theorem says, and it's an existence and uniqueness theorem. And we generalize these results to many different Riemannian manifolds, but that Riemannian manifold aspect of this is not the focus of this talk, so I will not it's there just for the sake of completeness, but this is the one. So this was known for the Laplacian, and we generalized it from the linear operator to the non-linear operator P Laplacian with Rajesh Mahadevan for the same family of domains. That is, there is a big ball minus closure of the smaller ball. But here in this case, we could not prove the uniqueness. We proved that the concentric configuration minimizes the eigenvalue, but we could not prove that that's the only minimizer. So we could not prove that it strictly decreases, so lambda 1, it maximizes, here it maximizes. So we could not prove that it is the only maximizer. And in other words, we could not prove that as the center of the inner ball slides along the radius of the outer ball, we could not prove strict monotonicity of the eigenvalue. Okay, and that was because we did not know a strong comparison principle for the P Laplacian. At that, we were not aware of it. Now there is some partial results in this direction which we can use now. But the strict monotonicity was proved by Anup, TV, Bobko, and Shashi. And they proved it using some method of contradiction. So they assume that suppose there is one more critical point, then they use the expression of the derivative of lambda 1 prime, and they try to shift things like to annular region concentric to wherever the inner ball was and whenever the outer ball was. So they took some annular region which were concentric but which were contained in the original domain, and they arrived at a contradiction using some nice idea. Yeah, so I will come to it. So yeah, so I wanted to make a comment, but I think I can postpone that comment for the time being. So now, so the generalization is with Shovik-Roy, again for P equal to 2, that is for the linear case. We took a different family of admissible domains, which were of the form B minus P, where B was a planar disk of a given radius, okay, and with also its fixed center. And P is a smaller domain, which has Dn symmetry for n even. Okay, and so for example, it could be a square or it could be a equilateral triangle. No, when I'm taking n even, it cannot be an equilateral triangle, but it could be a square, it could be an ellipse, or it could be an hexagon, regular hexagon, and so on. So from this B, I'm removing domain which are not circular, but which has some other symmetry like Dn symmetry. And so for n equal to even, we could prove everything because it's a linear case. We don't need the strong comparison principle. We know the strong maximum principle which are applicable to the linear cases. So we use that to get the result that we could identify the maximizing configurations and the minimizing configurations, and we proved that between the consecutive maximizing and minimizing configuration, the eigenvalue is strictly monotone. But this was for n equal to even. For n odd, we could identify the critical points, but we could not prove that these are the only critical points. So in other words, we could prove strict monotonicity between the maximizer and the minimizing configuration, but we could not prove that it was strictly monotonic between the maximizing and the minimizing property. That means between the critical points that we identified, we could not rule out the possibility of any more critical points. This was when this paper was written with Shovik-Roy. But when we wrote this paper with Mrityunjay, we could prove but we had numerical evidence to suggest that the result also holds for n equal to odd. And in this paper with Mrityunjay, we proved this conjecture for not just for p equal to 2, but for any p between 1 and infinity. Okay. And here in this paper with Shovik, we proved that lambda 1 is optimum when an axis of symmetry of P coincides with the diameter of the disk. And we could give a complete characterization of the maximizing and the minimizing domains for n even case. Monotonicity of lambda 1 between the consecutive maximizing and minimizing configurations were given, as I already told you. Okay, so so suppose this is the disk. This is one of the possibility of the domain in the admissible family of domains. So suppose n was 4, then you take a disk minus a square. So I am only allowing C2 boundary. So you can think of this square with a rounded corner. So there are no sharp corners because I am always taking domains with C2 boundary. Okay, so this is the configuration which I will be calling at off position. And this is the configuration which I will be calling it on position. So I will rotate this in inner domain P about its own center so that it goes from this off position till to this on position, and this periodically this repeats, right, because of the Dn symmetry of the inner domain. And this will be one of the intermediate configuration where I am rotating. So suppose this off configuration was my initial configuration, then if I rotate it by an angle theta, then or angle t, then this will be my intermediate configuration till it reaches this on configuration, and this process repeats, right? And we try to study the behavior of lambda 1 as this with respect to the rotation of this inner domain about its own center, because it has a Dn symmetry. Center of that domain makes sense. Okay, how much time do I have? We started a bit late. Yeah, so maybe, yeah, okay. So now So these are some examples to show the on and off configuration when n is odd. So when n is odd, this will be something which will be called as off configuration, and this configuration will be called as the on configuration. And when n is even, this is off and this is on. I'm not getting into the real technical definition of the off and on configuration in the interest of time. So the point is, with Mrityunjay Ghosh, we proved that lambda 1 is optimum only when, so this is existence and uniqueness. That means we proved these are the only critical points. Okay, only when an axis of symmetry of P coincides with the diameter of B. So you will see, observe that these are when I say an axis of symmetry of P coincides with the diameter of B, that means these are either the on or the off configuration. So intermediate configurations are not that configurations. So optimum values, that is the critical points, are the ones which are either off or on configurations. Then complete characterization of the maximizing and the minimizing domains for each n greater than or equal to 2 is given. In the for this this is for any p between 1 and infinity, but this strict monotonicity is proved only for a certain range of p. So p larger than 3/2 to infinity. So we were aiming to prove this for p between 1 to infinity, but for p between 1 and 3/2 we still do not have the strict monotonicity. Okay, so that is still remaining. Okay, so now complete characterization of this maximizing and minimizing is given, and monotonicity of lambda 1 again between two consecutive axes. So this is not just for n equal to odd, where dn symmetry where n is equal to odd, for p equal to 2, but even for so this is not just for n even, but the proof also works for n odd, and not only that, it works for a larger values of p. So the result extends to non-linear operators too. And as a consequence of the monotonicity property, we do get a result which tells about some possibility for the nodal line of the second eigenfunction of the same eigenvalue problem. It rules out one particular possibility of the nodal lines. Okay, so it does give some information about the geometry of the nodal line, that a nodal line cannot be of a particular type. So that is an important application of this, but the nodal line for the second eigenfunction only. Okay, so that is something, a good application which came out of this. So the key highlights of this paper is so for p between 3/2 and infinity, as I told you, we obtain the strict monotonicity of lambda 1. We use a strong comparison principle due to Skiunzi in the proof. This paper gives a direct and simpler proof for the strict monotonicity as compared to the one available in Anup Sasi and Bob Kong. So this is the paper I referred to a while ago, where they use a method of contradiction to prove that the critical point that were obtained were the only critical points, but that was an indirect proof. But we gave a much simpler and a direct proof of this. And this proof also extends the results that were obtained in my paper with Rajesh Mahadevan. So now what happens outside this particular range of P, that is this small range where P is between 1 and 3/2, we obtain a non-strict monotonicity for sure, but not the strict one. So using some weak comparison principle, due to this weak comparison principle, a version of this weak comparison principle was obtained in a joint work with Rajesh Mahadevan and Francisco Toledo. Right, so we use that to get the non-strict monotonicity in this particular paper. And as I told you, the monotonicity results for lambda 1, it gives some information about the nodal set of a second eigenfunction, that it cannot possess a dihedral symmetry of the same order as that of the inner domain. Okay, and to the best of our knowledge, this is the first result regarding the geometry of the nodal set of a second eigenfunction for doubly connected planar domains other than the domains bounded by two spheres. Okay, only for the sphere minus a sphere it was known, but any other doubly connected domains, this is the first known result. And of course, we proved the conjecture which was posed in our earlier paper for n equal to odd and for p equal to 2. Okay, so yeah, I think Okay, so let me just give the key steps in the proof. So as I told you, there is this shape differentiation step, then there is this rotating plane method, and there is this application of the comparison theorems. So we saw that when my domain is getting perturbed, my omega is changing to omega t. As a result, my solution is also changing to y1 of omega t. And so this is not important because I'm not getting into the details of the proof, but as a consequence your lambda 1 is also changing to lambda 1 of omega t. Okay, and as part of the shape differentiation step, so we try to study why this lambda 1 is so this is not new in this paper, this was already known, we just use it in this particular paper. So this lambda 1 as a function of t is it happens to be a C1 curve, and its derivative, it's a function of one variable, so its derivative is has got this particular expression. Okay, so this is only on the boundary of the inner domain as it is changing. Okay, so now in order to study the behavior of lambda 1, the critical points of lambda 1, the monotonicity of lambda 1, we only need to check where this right hand side is 0, where it is positive, where it is, whether it is greater than or equal to 0, whether it is strictly positive for certain range of t or not, etc. Okay, so now what we do is we divide this boundary of the inner domain, these are two different examples, into sectors. So you take all the axes of symmetry of the inner domain and divide the boundary of the inner domain as a union of those many sectors, and then we come up, so then we come up with a pairing of the sector such that when you reflect one sector about the axis of symmetry, this sector should completely go inside the other sector with which it is being paired. So we have to come up with a suitable pairing such that reflection of one goes completely inside the other, but the reflection of the boundary of the inner domain goes exactly on itself, which will happen because we are anyway taking the axis of symmetry of the inner domain. So that is the idea. And once you do this for n equal to odd, there are bigger challenges. I don't have time to get into those challenges right now. But n equal to even, the pairing is straightforward because there are even number of sectors on either side of the axis of symmetry. Okay, so now once you split your integral into the sum of the integral over these sectors, boundary of these sectors, and you pair them, now it is enough to study the sign of each term in this pairing. And it so happens that each term in the pairing will have a constant sign, and that comes to our, so the critical points are like straightforward. The critical points are the on and off configuration. That is because the Laplacian is invariant under the isometry of the domain and so on. And a reflection about about this is anyway. So that comes from the properties of the Laplacian and the P Laplacian, that the periodicity and the critical point. But what we need to show is the strict monotonicity or the non-strict monotonicity. So when we had the linear case, then we have this lemma of Hopf. So if you remember in our expression for lambda 1 prime, we have this normal derivative of the solution. Okay, so this normal, so we pair the domain, the sectors in such a way that in one sector, this is positive, and in the sector with which it is paired, it is negative, but with the same value. So that we only need to study the sign of this del ut by del nt x to the power p minus del ut by del nt x prime, because we are reflecting that sector about that axis of symmetry. So we only need to study the difference of this power of p of this normal derivative. So when it was linear, the lemma of Hopf came to our rescue, and we could analyze the sign of the lambda 1 prime t using that. So this is the lemma of Hopf, which most of the people working in PDEs would know. But when the situation is a non-linear setup, then there is something called comparison principles, weak comparison principle and strong comparison principle. So the strong comparison principle is so you have inequality of this, there are u and v which are in C1 omega bar, and g is a locally Lipschitz function. So this is in Euclidean space, and suppose you have inequality like this in omega, and assume that either one of them is a non-negative solution of this. So one of them has to be a solution and it has to be a non-negative solution. And if your P is between this range, so in our case, because for us n is equal to 2, the P has to be between 3/2 and infinity. Then if you know that for some connected subdomain omega prime, which is inside omega, if you have some dominance like this between U and V, then you will have strict dominance everywhere inside the same subdomain. Okay, unless they are identically equal. So if there is at least one point where one is strictly dominated by the other and everyone else it is non-strictly dominated by the non-strict dominance happens, then everywhere the non-strict dominance will happen. So this is something which makes our life and the proof much simpler. This is by Skew and Z, which was proved, I think, in 2014. And there are these weak comparison principles where we can only conclude about the non-strict dominance in the interior, and also when the non-strict dominance of the normal derivatives also. Right? That is this is the version of weak comparison principle which was proved in one of my previous papers with Rajesh Mahadevan and Francisco Toledo. So I think I will stop here because I think my time is up. I will not go through the complete proof, but these were the main ideas in the proof. Maybe I can just go to so again, the numerical evidence also, I don't have time to go to, but maybe I can just list some useful references and I will end my talk here. Thank you.
Thank you, Anissa, for the clear talk. And any questions from participants?
I have one question.
Yeah,
This is
sure.
Tirupati.
Yeah.
Yeah, Anissa, I have one question. This the inner circle, if the
Who is
radius of the
asking the question, because I can't see the complete window. Yeah.
Yeah, this is Professor Tirupati Gudi from Maths Department.
Please, idea. Please ask. Yeah.
Yeah, Gudi, please. Hello, Gudi.
Maybe he's on mute.
Yeah,
He's not on mute. Yeah, Gudi, you are on mute.
Can you hear me?
I think his connection is lost.
Yes, now I can hear you. Yes.
Yeah. So my question is, if the inner circle, the radius of the inner circle shrinks to 0, is there any characterization of this? I mean, can we study the growth or the decay of lambda 1?
Yes, because we have this monotonicity property for lambda 1, right? The bigger domain has smaller lambda 1 and smaller domain has bigger lambda 1. So as the diameter of the inner circle decreases, the lambda 1 will keep on increasing. And we already know by the Faber-Cran theorem that among all the domains of given volume, the ball minimizes lambda 1. So when it shrinks to 0, of course, it's not a ball, but I think it will converge to the eigenvalue of the ball, which is minimum over all the simply connected domains. So we are in the category of doubly connected domains right now.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions? Anissa, do you have generally in this analysis for general second order elliptic operators, probably with the strong assumptions on the coefficients Aij, like symmetry or rotation?
Yes, for this general, so we have that result also for any second order elliptic operator in divergence form. I will just mention it here. So this is, I'm not sure whether I listed it here or not. Yes, this is the one, Chorwadwala and Shovik-Roy. Placement of an obstacle for optimizing the fundamental eigenvalue of divergence form elliptic operators, where the coefficients have some symmetry.
Put on rotational symmetry, because Laplacian has that property, that similar rotational symmetry.
Exactly.
Okay, if there are any more questions, if there are no more questions, thank you once again, Anissa.
Thank you, Professor Nandakumaran. Thanks to everyone for their time and attention. Bye.
Yeah, thank you.
I'll stop recording.
Yeah, you can stop. We have a couple of minutes